Imagine a world where speaking the truth could cost you your life. A society that proudly calls itself a democracy, yet silences its most critical voices. Sound familiar? You might be picturing today's world. But this story begins over 2,000 years ago in the city of Athens, where a man named Socrates was sentenced to death, not for committing a crime, but for asking dangerous questions. Welcome to the Unfolding Journey, the channel where we trace the deep patterns of human history, thought, and transformation. If you're drawn to the crossroads of philosophy, politics, and timeless human questions, you're in the right place. Today, we're diving into one of the most iconic and disturbing episodes in the history of democracy, the trial and execution of Socrates. And we're asking, what does it reveal about the fragility of democracy, then and now? Socrates wasn't a politician, a general, or a ruler. He was a stonemason by trade and a relentless questioner by nature. He roamed the streets of Athens, engaging in conversations with anyone willing to speak. Politicians, craftsmen, poets. No one was safe from his piercing logic and his now famous Socratic method, a technique that revealed ignorance masked as knowledge. What made Socrates dangerous was not just what he said, but what he challenged. In a city that prized reputation, consensus, and civic pride, Socrates exposed hypocrisy and false certainty. He didn't offer answers, he unstitched assumptions. He believed that the unexamined life is not worth living, and he lived that belief to the very end. But in democratic Athens, where public opinion reigned supreme, this made him a threat. Athens in the 5th century BCE is often hailed as the birthplace of democracy. Citizens could vote directly on decisions, debate in the assembly, and hold officials accountable. But this wasn't a democracy as we understand it today. It excluded women, slaves, and foreigners. It was also deeply vulnerable to demagoguery, mob rule, and the shifting winds of public emotion. Following a disastrous war with Sparta, Athens was politically shaken. The city had suffered internal coups, devastating defeats, and widespread distrust. People were looking for scapegoats, and Socrates, with his strange ways and contempt for majority opinion, became a prime target. He was charged with corrupting the youth and impiety, crimes that were vague, subjective, and deeply political. The real charge? Making powerful people uncomfortable. Socrates stood before 500 Athenian jurors. His accusers painted him as a corrupter of morals, an atheist, and a threat to the social order. But Socrates did not beg for mercy. He didn't try to win favor with the crowd. Instead, he spoke with defiance, famously saying, "I am not wise, but neither are you, and I will not stop questioning." He argued that he was a gadfly, a necessary irritant to the lazy horse of the Athenian state, waking it up from complacency. But in a system where public opinion equaled truth, Socrates' intellectual honesty was seen as arrogance. The jury voted, and by a narrow margin, sentenced him to death. He could have escaped. His followers offered to bribe the guards, but he refused. To violate the law, even unjustly applied, would betray his principles. Socrates drank the hemlock, calmly, willingly, and surrounded by students who would later immortalize his final moments. Socrates' death haunted his most famous student, Plato. In his dialogues, Plato transforms the trial of Socrates into a profound meditation on politics, truth, and justice. In the Republic, Plato presents a chilling critique of democracy. He argues that democracies, driven by desire and emotion, inevitably spiral into chaos and eventually give rise to tyranny. Democracy, Plato wrote, is a charming form of government, full of variety and disorder, and dispensing a sort of equality to equals and unequals alike. He saw how the very freedom that democracy offered could become its undoing, when truth is replaced with popularity and wisdom drowned out by noise. Plato's vision wasn't just about ancient Athens. It was a philosophical warning that echoes through time. So what does all this have to do with modern life? A lot, actually. Today's democracies are grappling with their own fragilities. Polarization, misinformation, the rise of populist leaders, and the erosion of truth in public discourse all raise unsettling questions. Is democracy stable when driven more by emotion than reason? What happens when truth becomes unpopular? Who pays the price when dissent is silenced? Like ancient Athens, we live in a time where public opinion often eclipses critical thinking, where social media, the new public square, rewards sensationalism over substance, where whistleblowers, journalists, and thinkers can be vilified for challenging the mainstream. Socrates reminds us that a functioning democracy is not just about voting. It's about vigilance, dialogue, and a shared commitment to truth. It's about protecting space for uncomfortable questions and the courage to ask them. One of the most powerful lessons from Socrates is that truth does not need a majority. He stood alone and paid the ultimate price, but he remained true to his principles. In a democracy, every individual carries the burden of critical thought. It's not enough to participate. We must reflect, challenge, and question, even when it's hard, even when it's unpopular. As modern citizens, our role isn't just to react to events, but to understand them. To cultivate a kind of inner Socratic method, always probing, always learning. In a world drowning in information, the Socratic example is a call to wisdom over noise, dialogue over shouting, integrity over image. Socrates' death was a tragedy, but not a meaningless one. It forced generations of thinkers to confront the tension between individual conscience and collective power, between truth and majority will. And today, as we navigate the stormy waters of modern political life, we need his example more than ever. Democracy is not a machine that runs on autopilot. It lives or dies by the values and vigilance of its people. So let us not forget the man who dared to ask, who refused to flatter, and who paid the price for a life of questioning. Let us remember Socrates, not just as a martyr of philosophy, but as a guardian of democratic conscience. If this exploration sparked a thought, raised a question, or challenged your view, then that's exactly what Socrates would have wanted. Subscribe to The Unfolding Journey for more deep dives into history, philosophy, and the ideas that shape our world. Like the video if you found it meaningful. Drop a comment. What lessons do you think Socrates' trial holds for us today? Because the journey of understanding never ends, and it unfolds step by step together. Consider a high school history class pivoting from lectures to seminar-style discussion. Instead of rote memorization of dates and facts, students explore causation, motive, and perspective. Asking questions like, why did this event unfold differently for this group? Sparks empathy and complexity. Research has shown that classrooms using Socratic techniques often report improved critical thinking, better retention, and deeper engagement. In a university setting, business students facing a case study don't merely identify the problem. They challenge assumptions, co-construct strategies, and test counterarguments. When alumni enter workplaces, they are better equipped to listen, adapt, and collaborate, skills honed in question-driven environments. Even beyond schools, the method gains traction in corporate training, civic education, and leadership development. Wherever learning happens, be it boardroom or neighborhood, encouraging thoughtful inquiry fosters better decisions, deeper relationships, and dynamic growth. In a world that floods us with answers, the courage to question becomes revolutionary. The Socratic method invites educators and learners alike to slow down, lean in, and discover, not just known truths, but unseen ones. It transforms classrooms into communities of explorers, where curiosity drives the journey and understanding deepens through dialogue. If you believe education is more than just facts, and that great learning starts with a good question, then you're already on the path. Imagine what could happen if more teachers, parents, and learners embrace this approach. Thank you for joining me on Unfolding Journey, where ideas unfold into new ways of thinking and living. If this exploration into the Socratic method resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with fellow educators or curious minds, and hit that subscribe button. That way, you'll never miss an unfolding idea that might just transform how we grow and learn together.